Come on. YouTube, you're here. Yay, everyone's here. Here for a good time. Today I am going to be talking about priorities. How to priorities, how to prioritize, how to figure out what your priorities are in the life and how to make sure that you are actually working on those, in your daily life. Because it's easy to say that something is important to you, but then, everyday life takes over. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. So, going to be the usual. I will go through all the steps I have for you, all the tips I have, and then at the end, I will take questions and comments and stuff like that. So, feel free to say hi, drop your questions. Um, and actually, yeah, in the chat, you can drop down like what is a current priority for you. It doesn't have to be like major priority, but what is something that you are currently focusing your attention on? So the first tip I have for you, and if you are a newsletter subscriber, you will have already heard me talk about this one, but that is looking at each task on your list and asking yourself, what would be the consequences of not doing this thing? That is a really quick way to figure out whether or not something is actually a priority and whether or not you actually need to be doing it. Because so often we put things on our list and we think that they're important or we think they're super urgent. But when you actually stop and ask yourself, okay, well, if I didn't do this, what would be the consequence of that? Like, would there really be a negative outcome? And by stopping to kind of rationalize and think through, thank you for these hearts on Instagram. That's a really great way to cut right to the core of something and figure out whether or not you need to or want to be doing it. Because let's face it, look, it's December. We're all busy people. We're all busy people at the best of times, but particularly in December. So that's a really great question to ask yourself when you're trying to find more time for yourself or you're trying to figure out what is actually a priority and what is not. Asking yourself, if I didn't do this thing, what would the consequences be? So can just force you to stop and really take a look at that, because in our heads, we can think, oh, I have to do that. I have to do that. But really sit down and think, do I? Like, what's the worst that could happen, really? Second tip for you then. This is a really great one if you're trying to kind of maybe plan out your week or your month and kind of on a day-to-day basis to really see what's important and what's not, or to make decisions between maybe two different things that seem important. And that is to identify your values. What are the values and principles by which you live your life? So an example could be, maybe you run a business and you're always putting people before profit. So that could be kind of your, overarching value in your business, in your life, that if it comes down to making more money or helping more people, you will always choose people. So on a day-to-day basis, then, once you have identified that, that will be your framework so that when it comes down to, okay, will I focus on this task or will I focus on that task? Go back to your values and say, okay, which one of these helps more people? And that can be really great. One of your values might be, living a vegan or a vegetarian lifestyle. So again, that can kind of determine the direction that you go with your day. Various different things like that. They're going to be so different for everyone. So I don't want to go through them. Maybe you know some of them right now, so you can pop them in the chat. But do be be honest with yourself. Like, we all say family is the most important thing. But is it really? And I'm not saying that it's not, but sometimes there are certain situations where other things may come before family. For me, my mental health will generally always come before my family, because if I can't look after myself, I'm kind of doing them a disservice and I can't show up for them or give myself fully to them, or, be able to spend the time that I want to spend with them and truly enjoy that. So for me, I will generally prioritize my mental health, except when it comes to my daughter. My daughter will always be top of the totem pole there. But in general, yeah. So don't kind of automatically think that something is important to you. Really look and say, okay, the way I've lived my life thus far, does that kind of prove that that is actually a value, something that I hold dear. So don't just kind of automatically throw something out, friends and family are the most important thing. Sometimes they will be, and sometimes they won't. So try and get down to the core and identify the values by which you live your life. And they don't have to be true 100% of the time. But if like 9 times out of 10, that is the way you live your life, that's the value that you choose to live your life by, then that's a good indication. By identifying those, then it just becomes much easier down the road when you're faced with two different priorities. Going back to your values again will give you that structure and that framework, and will make it much easier when it comes to making a decision. The third tip, then, this is a really great one. It is to examine how you are spending your time, looking back at your calendar, your planner, or whatever for the past week, the past month, and actually seeing how you're spending your time and whether or not that is contributing to the life you want. It's really easy to get sucked into doing things and never evaluating whether those things are the right things to do. And we all get swept up in that, particularly in December. We all get swept up into that idea of do, go, 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 busy, busy, busy. But actually stopping and taking some time to look back and say, okay, well, did that thing contribute to my life in a positive way? Was that a good use of my time? And truly taking that moment to reflect. Otherwise, you're just going to continue doing the things that you have always done. You're going to continue in go mode, and you're not going to be kind of refining and honing your process and your to-do list. And that's really, really important. If you're not reflecting and looking back, how are you going to know if those things were important to you? And sometimes we only know things in hindsight. So if you're not, again, taking that time to reflect and evaluate, you may not be learning any lessons that will stand you in good stead. So if you look back at the past week and at the time you thought these were really important things, but now that you look back again with that hindsight, with 2020 vision, when you look back, you can have a much more objective view, I guess, and that will help to inform you in the future then when you are planning out for the next week or the next month. And even just kind of on a day-to-day basis as you're doing a task, kind of stopping yourself, afterwards and say, okay, how did that task make me feel? How did that task contribute to the life that I want to be living? Did it move me closer to my goals? Was it just a waste of time? Was it productive? So actually evaluating, taking that time to evaluate what you're doing and whether or not it is worth continuing to do that thing. Tip number 4, then, this is also a great one. This is to give yourself a cutoff point. It's really easy to think that something is important to you, but if it's not something that you can take action on in the here and now, or not something that you want to take action on in the here and now, it's not a current priority. And really, there is no point in the here and now being focused on something that will be a priority for you in the future, or maybe a priority for you in the future. So give yourself a cutoff point, let's say 6 months, 12 months. Like, if really it's not a priority for you, it may become a priority for you, and that's great, but it shouldn't be on your to-do list. If it's not something that you are going to be taking immediate or very soon action on, it's not a current priority. So give yourself that cutoff point, and it can be a little bit flexible. But if you're not going to be working on something, let's say for the next 6 months, like you do not envision yourself making progress towards this thing, or you're waiting for something else to happen first before you can do that thing, then just do yourself a favor and set it aside, put it on a completely separate list, put it out of the way, because it's not a current priority, and that's what you want to be focusing on. We all have things that we want to do, like health, big priority for a lot of us, I'm sure, again, friends and family, those types of things. But you can only focus on so many things at once. So while something may be a priority for you, if it's not a current priority, If you need to focus on something else first, then do that. And don't feel bad about it. But give yourself that cutoff point and allow yourself to say, okay, this is not a current priority. Maybe in the future, maybe future Laura will be worrying about that thing. But right now, I have a different priority and I need to focus on this one and get this one all sewn up before I can then move on to future priorities. So give yourself a cutoff point. I think that's really important. Okay, I've got 2 more tips for you, and then I will hop in and answer questions, comments, all that sort of stuff. The 5th one, then, I'm sure you've heard this before, but I want to give you kind of a question that will help guide you. The You've probably heard of the Eisenhower matrix. If not, you may have heard of just like labeling things as important or urgent, and or maybe some mix of the two. So the whole idea is that you would mark things, certain tasks will be important and they will be urgent, there will be a deadline on them, and in the grand scheme of things, they are important things, etc. Some things will not be urgent and will not be important. And then there may be a mix. Some things will be important, not necessarily urgent. There's no like immediate pressing deadline. And then other things will be urgent, but in the grand scheme of things, not really that important. There is a deadline, but if you missed it, so thank you everyone for joining. I'm just on the last 2 tips and then I will get to all of your comments and questions. As usual, the replay will be available on YouTube. So if you've missed the beginning of it, or if you want to go back and rewatch for the tips, it will all be up on YouTube. But yeah, so urgent and important. What I want to say here is kind of in the beginning, set aside urgency. Don't worry about urgency for now, because urgency is not a great barometer, particularly, certainly not at the first hurdle. The first question you always want to ask yourself is if a task is important. The reason for that is if a task is urgent, that does not necessarily mean that it needs to be done. On the flip side, just because something isn't urgent doesn't mean that you can just set it aside and not worry about it. So let me give you examples. Urgency, a phone call. Somebody wants you to call them back. They're leaving the office at 5 p.m. It's now like 4:50 or something. So that's kind of urgent. Like you need to do that in the next few minutes. But is it really important? Obviously it depends on the content of the phone call, like what it's all about. But is that phone call an important phone call? Do you need to drop everything at 4:50 and call this person back? So that's an example of a case where something may be urgent, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do it. And then on the flip side, just because something isn't necessarily urgent doesn't mean that you can just not do that thing. Medical checkups and things like that are a great example here. Things that don't necessarily have a deadline on them, like a routine health check, doesn't necessarily have to be done on a certain day, but it's not something that you just want to completely forget about. So your first question, your first port of call should always be, is this thing important? Because the rest really does not matter. The rest is kind of will depend on the timing of when you do it. But importance should always be your first question, I think, there. So that's just kind of a little tip for if you have heard of this Eisenhower matrix where you label things as urgent or important. Give importance more of a say, focus on that kind of first, and then use urgency to kind of determine when you should get to that important task. And then the final tip then, and this has helped me like so many times, but if you could only do one thing today, this week, this month, what would it be? Really limit yourself, because we tend to think, I am so guilty of this. Years ago, I used to keep a list that was, if I had unlimited time and resources, what would I do? And for me, it was kind of one of those pie in the sky, like these are the things I would love to be working on. And if I have time, those are the things I'm going to focus on. But the reality is we don't have unlimited time. We don't have unlimited resources. So, and giving yourself too many options and thinking that you have lots of time is not a great way to focus your mind. So asking yourself, looking at your list, assuming that your day is all going to fall apart, something unexpected will crop up. If you just say to yourself, if I could only achieve one thing today or one thing this week, what would it be? Like, what would I want it to be? What is going to make the biggest difference in my life? What is going to move me the closest to the goals that I want, the goals that I have for myself? Really focusing down. It's too easy to look at a day and think, I've got X amount of hours, I can do all these things. And if you get to all the other things, like bonus, that's great. But if you could only do one, and that would really help to narrow down, and it's hard, it's definitely hard. And you may end up with like two or three things, but forcing yourself to limit your options can give you that insight you need into what is actually a priority and what's really not. Again, I guess it just all comes down to kind of being aware, being mindful of things, just taking a moment to stop and say, how is this impacting my life? In the grand scheme of things, is this important to me? If I could only do one thing, what would be, and what would be the consequences if I didn't do this thing, etc. Those are all my tips for you this week for prioritizing. Again, in the course, the Productivity Power Up, I go into this in so much more detail. There's a whole module dedicated to prioritizing, and it's making sure that you are always working on the right thing at the right time. Because that's what productivity is all about, isn't it? Like, if you're not working on the right thing, it doesn't matter how much of that thing you're doing. And if you're not doing it at the right time, again, you're wasting your time. So I dedicate a whole module to prioritizing in the course. Relaunching so soon, 2 weeks left. It's crunch time. I'm kind of freaking out about it. But yeah, that's coming up. If you have questions about the course as well, like, obviously feel free to pop into the chat and ask those. Okay, let me go back and go through some of your comments and questions. Thank you so much for being here. Job 8891 says, my top priority is to become good at something before the Great Reset is implemented. By the Great Reset, do you mean the new year? Or is that some sort of like religious Mayan thing? What is the Great Reset? Sounds interesting though. Wouldn't that be great? Just have a reset button. Yeah. For certain things. Rebecca says, my priority is getting us moved out of mobile. AL, you see, I'm not great with the states that are shortened to the two, and I think I've mentioned this in a previous one. Atlanta. No. Alabama. And to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. TN, I think, is Tennessee. I'm learning. The longer we're here, the more money we're losing. Moves are stressful, but once they're done and behind you and you can just sit, great. So good luck with the move. Amanda says, hi, Laura. Hi, everyone. Let's get ourselves sorted, eh? Yup. Trying. Really trying. I tell you, the last few days, I have been so down. Really unmotivated, just sad. That's one of those things where it's like a culmination of small things that individually would not have thrown me off, but when you just have those moments where it's kind of like lots of small little things, and they really got to me. So the power walk yesterday, so if you've been following my Instagram stories, you'll know Scout and I went out for a walk, and that kind of refreshed me a little bit, and when I got back I was ready to go again. So yeah, but like a real roller coaster the last few days. Let me see. Rebecca says, down to the last few days, how fast can I pack these last few boxes and get them into storage, ready to throw the rest at Goodwill? Isn't that great? Like, moving is so great for really helping you prioritize your stuff. Let me see. Eva says, getting rid of things in my life that pull me down and depress me and hold me back. Yeah, and again, that's where like taking a second to actually evaluate that stuff, stepping back, because when you're in it, it's so hard to see it. And that's why I always recommend doing a weekly review or a monthly review or something and looking back, because when you're doing it, it can seem so important. When you're in the middle of something, it seems like that's the most important thing. But looking back, and obviously you can't change how you've already spent your time, but you can let it inform how you spend your time in future, and that can be really helpful. 808 Blessed One, hi Laura, love your channel. Thank you. Can you do a video on car organization and entryway since the pandemic? How do you sanitize certain things and what do you use? Do you sanitize your groceries, etc.? I do not sanitize my groceries. I wash my hands. Well, Sam has been doing most of the grocery shopping, I will say. So it's basically just washing hands when we get home, putting everything away. But we don't sanitize our groceries, no. Car organization. I have been thinking about doing a video on like car decluttering and organizing, but I don't know, my car is pretty tidy and organized already, so I don't like, there's not much I can do with mine, and I don't use it all that often, to be honest. Entryway, we have nothing in our entryway. So yeah, I'm not sure how helpful I could be there. I do have though our mud room. See, when I think of entryway, I think of front room, like front door. But generally, we come in through the garage now. Like in Ireland, that's not really a thing. We don't have like garages that are attached to our house that like lead into the house generally. So when I think of entryway, I think of front door, whereas actually our entryway now is usually through the garage. And we do have a little mudroom and a coat closet. It's just a disaster right now. And I've been thinking of doing just a little Instagram story, like a time lapse of me just clearing it out. I could maybe turn that into a video. It's a really tight space because it's a little hallway. But maybe I could do a video on that. Is anyone else interested in that, like car and entryway? But no, don't sanitize groceries. Generally, we just wash our hands. I do have hand sanitizer in the car. So if I've been to a store, as soon as I get back in the car, I will sanitize my hands. We don't go like that many places, so we don't have to do the sanitizing thing that much. Robert says, just in to drop a like. I'll take it. Thinking beyond, I felt unmotivated to do housework like cooking and cleaning because they don't feel urgent or important. Any advice for how to overcome this? Yeah, don't do them. I'm not the best person to ask about cooking. I despise cooking. Don't like it. My husband does most of it, I will say. So I hear you on that, and I just don't do it. I avoid it as much as I can. Cleaning, also not a great person for cleaning. I know very often people think because I have like a kind of a decluttering channel, I guess that's what I talk about a lot, that I'm a very clean person, that I have a really clean house. That's not the case. My home is pretty organized, not right now because, you know, Christmas, December, chaos. But my home is usually tidy. It's not generally clean. Like I don't dust very often. I don't vacuum very often. I don't mop very often. So just don't do them. I'm aware that that is terrible advice, but don't put pressure on yourself to do these things if they don't feel like a priority for you right now. The thing that I always say is that your home can always be cleaned. Like if you need to take a few days, a few weeks, a few months off to focus on something else, you can always clean your house. There's very little that can't be undone when it comes to your home, when it comes to cleaning. Like no matter how thick the dust is, it can always be dusted away again. So yeah, I would think just focus on keeping things hygienic, and then focus on what is important to you. If you can maybe hire someone in to do it, obviously now that's depending on how you feel, but like cooking, order like meal kits, order takeout, again, budget depending. But there are definitely things you can do to minimize the amount of time that you have to spend doing those things. Sorry, I know that was terrible advice. But really, I don't like, if that's not a priority for you, but your living situation is still, hygienic and it's still comfortable, that you're not tripping over things or endangering yourself or anyone else. I don't see the harm, honestly. Let me see. DTD Inkman. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Are you planning meals for weekly? Nope. Oh, I very rarely plan meals. I always intend to plan meals, but I very rarely actually do it. My husband cooks 4 nights a week for us. Um, and then we will usually order takeout 1 night a week. And then there are 2 other days where I have to fend for myself. Yeah, I don't. Those nights are usually like sandwich nights. So yeah, no, cooking, not my thing. Although if you did see my Insta stories, you'll know I do a mean fry up. That's pretty much the only thing I can cook. So I did a nice fry up yesterday and it was sublime. Are you using robot vacuum cleaner? It helps a lot. Yes. Agreed. Yeah, Rex is still on the go. We haven't had him on in a while now because we've got all the Christmas decorations and we've still got some like little bits on the floor and spread around and things that need to be put up and hung up and, you know, just little bits of decorations that we've taken out of tubs and then just dumped everywhere. So Amanda says, I think we're all finding we have a bit less resilience with emotions. Coronavirus exerts a kind of low level stress, even if we're not affected. It's just been a year. I think a lot of it, or certainly some of it, is, you know, not being able to see my family. Obviously, that is now starting to affect Scout a lot. Particularly the past week, she has been very down about that. And, you know, when she's down, then I feel down. So, yeah, like I said, it's just lots of little things. And Ned says, I almost set my kitchen on fire. It needs to prioritize paying attention. The amount of things that I have set on fire with my cooking. Yeah. Those are stories for another day. But yeah, I terrible cook. Let me see here. Rebecca says, you're so right. Going through this move has freed me from so much, not just physically, but also emotionally. Feeling so refreshed and excited for the next step. Much love. Yeah, moving is just one of those things where going through it, it's horrendous usually, but coming out the other side, so satisfying. But my biggest advice to you is unpack all your boxes as quickly as possible. The longer you leave them sitting there, they're just not going to get unpacked. So we always, anytime we have moved, we have spent probably 2 days, like 2 hardcore days, just unpacking everything. And those days we will like order food. We won't bother with anything like that. We just focus on unpacking and getting everything set up. So that's what I would say to you. It's tough, but once you do it, it just feels so much better, because if you have boxes that are still unpacked, it's just that lingering, kind of like the coronavirus. It's just this low level stress that's always there. Yeah, so just try and get it all done in one go. Let me see. Stacey says, yes, video on that since it needs tidied anyhow. The entryway, mudroom. Yeah, it's just a really awkward space to film in because it's a hallway. So I can't get the camera back far enough to like show you the full span of it. So I'll have to try and work that out. And sometimes it's a case where, you know, there'll be some morning or something where I'll be trying to get Scout out the door for school and the whole thing will just annoy me and I will drop everything and do it then and there. And I won't even think about setting up a camera. So yeah, we'll see. I'm not making any promises. I'll add it to the list, but there may be a morning. I was this close over the weekend, this close to shaving my head. I'm so fed up of long hair, but I'm just not at the stage yet where I'm willing to go to a salon. I said to my husband, I'm like, that's too close. I'm not at a stage where I'm willing to let people that close to me. Then I was thinking, that's probably going to be my mantra for like from now forever. But I'm not at that stage yet. But I'm this close to just taking the clippers and getting rid of all of it. Like there'll still be, you know, I'll get like a 2 maybe, 2 or 3. But I'm very close to it. Very close. Ava says, I would say just take about 20 minutes to clean one room every other day. It's better than nothing. It is. But again, I would just focus on the things that actually need to be done. Like if you're vacuuming, for example, you don't need to vacuum the entire room. Just vacuum the like bits that you actually walk on, you know, the high traffic areas. But yeah, you're asking the wrong person for like cleaning tips and advice. I do have some videos actually on cleaning hacks and stuff. So like the small few things that I have learned, so that when I do have to clean, it's like done as quickly as possible. So yeah. John says, just glad seeing your face today. That's lovely. Thank you. Ned says, yeah, I'm not alone. Shauna, great advice. Home repair you need to stay up on, but cleaning is wherever your comfort level is. Absolutely. Yeah, as long as like things don't fall into disrepair, and as long as everything is hygienic, and it's not encroaching on your health or your safety or those of people that you live with. Everyone has their own tolerances. Like Sam has a completely different tolerance to cleanliness and tidiness than I do. So yeah, it's you just have to balance that. Don't think that you need to have a clean, spotless home. You definitely do not. My home is definitely not like that. Hannah says, oh yes, mental health and my little George. Oh, how is he? Tell him I said hi. Jenny says, after reaching middle age and realizing that my life is over half done, I feel I need to scramble to get it all done immediately. Listen, you have lived however many years. I'm guessing middle age, I'm going to say like 45-ish. But like how long were those 45 years? I mean, the first few years of your life, like when you're a kid and you're a teenager, even in your 20s, like those years fly by. But I feel after that, things potentially, I don't know, still have 10 years before I'm there. But if I asked you to do something that you absolutely hate for the next year, like every day for the next year, you had to do something that you absolutely despise, a year would seem like a really long time. So time is very subjective. If you're doing something you love at that time, it's just going to be all amazing and great. But just think about it that way. Time is so relevant to whatever you're doing. If it's passing quickly, it's probably because you're just like in the zone. You're doing things. You're getting by. It drags when you're like miserable when you're watching the clock. But yeah, like a year could be the longest year of your life. It could be the shortest year of your life. And I think 2020, we've probably felt it's been both. But yeah, try and think about it that way, if that helps. But I always try and think of it that way. Like if, what I think, like, oh, a year's just not enough time to do these things that I want to do. Then I think, okay, well, if I had to do something crap for the next year, if I knew I was stuck doing something that I absolutely hated for a whole year, then a year would seem like a super long time. Ned, quarantine haircut. This close, folks. This close. Next Monday, you may see all shorn. Christine, I've been in a dark place mentally, not even wanting to get out of bed. Who cares? Anyway, I don't know why I watched your live stream today. You don't know how much you helped. God bless you. Listen, I know what that's like. I have been there. It has been a year for everyone. It's been mentally exhausting. I'm glad you did tune into the live stream. And I know that other people in the chat will like hop in and give you support and say kind things. But sometimes you do need that connection, even if it is through a screen. Just something. But on those days, I get a lot of comments and questions like that, saying that they kind of don't feel like doing anything and it's hard. And I, again, 100% understand what that's like. But sometimes I feel like if you don't want to do something, don't force yourself to do something. Don't feel bad for not wanting to do something. That's okay. I would always say, like, try and do one tiny little thing, even if it's just getting dressed, even if it's just making a phone call, like even from your bed. Just one tiny little achievement. But don't think about, getting up and cleaning the house and doing all of these things. Sometimes you need those days where you just stay in bed and do nothing. I had one of those days a few days ago. Like I said, the last few days have not been great for me. But yeah, just look after yourself. Focus on yourself. Don't worry about what anyone else will think. Don't worry about like all the things you should be doing. Reach out to someone if you can. But yeah, I get it. It's definitely hard. Try get one tiny little achievement. And for like it will depend on each person. Like some people will be able to get up and have a shower and have a small meal. Other people will just be able to, call a friend or something. Other people may be able to get up and clean something. Go by your own scale, whatever feels right to you. But don't stress about it. Tomorrow is another day. Yeah, but I do hope you feel loads better soon. But it's one of those things. It's rough. It is rough. Stacey says, don't shave it off. I get like that and dye or trim my hair. Trim is not going to do it, Stacey. And I don't dye my hair. So, although it's going really grey now, so I'm getting also this close to dyeing it pink. I used to dye my hair when I was younger. I used to dye like a teenager. I would dye the bottom, like dip dye the bottom of my hair. So I used to have it used to be pink one day and then it'd be purple and I had it all different colors, red. But I've never dyed my whole head. But I'm getting there now. Now that it's starting to go grey. I never wanted to dye my whole hair because I didn't want to strip my natural color. But over the years, my color has darkened down a lot. So I'm more brunette now, whereas I used to be really blonde. And now I'm slowly transitioning to grey. So I'm like, well, if my natural color is going anyway. Elizabeth says, no, your voice is very calming. Have you considered reading bedtime stories? No, but I do get comments and questions like that all the time, whether it's about the calming element of my voice or just the accent. I've had requests to do ASMR videos. Yes, reading, doing audiobook readings, things like that. So I do. And then I get other people. I actually get quite an alarming amount of comments from people saying that there's something wrong with my voice. That it's there's some quiver in it and I should get that looked into. I should go to a doctor and get that seen to. I get comments about how my voice has changed from my first videos. There has been a dramatic change. First of all, I've grown up since then. Second of all, back then I was recording in a really echoey kitchen. So a lot of that was down to that, just bad sound. Not that it's incredible now, but it's better. And another reason then is just back then I was not used to the camera. So I was a little bit more shy and reserved. My voice was a little bit quieter. Whereas now I'm blah. So yeah, my voice seems to be, my voice and my accent, probably two of the most common questions or comments that I get. The random fun fact for you there. Let me see, I'll hop on Instagram and answer some of these. S Creation says, I use the Fly Lady system for cleaning. I've heard that works so well for people. It does not work well for me. I tried it years ago. And it's not something that works for me, but I know it works wonderfully for so many other people. DTD Inkman, again, I hope I have the right, that I'm pronouncing the right letters and stuff. I don't want to see a messy kitchen cabinet, especially Spice Rack in 2021. The kitchen for me is one of those. My kitchen right now is a disaster. And every time I see it, I'm just like, it's just a little bit of me that's but did that light? The light is dimmed. That's just not a priority for me right now. It's coming towards the end of the year. I'm trying to get the course out. Like I said, launching in 2 weeks. I just need to not focus on that right now. So yeah, I get it. Dara says, oh yeah, the clippers are calling my hair too. If only I had the guts to actually go for it. I'll do it if you do it. There we go. Hannah says, oh, Christine, bless you. I hope you find your peace too. Laura has helped me a lot over the years. Thank you, Laura. You're so very welcome. And like I said, it's because I've been there. I 100% understand what it is like. But there's always a way out. Like there's always light at the end of the tunnel. You will always find your way through it. And it will be a different kind of time frame for everyone. It will be a different journey for everyone. But there is always, always light at the end of that tunnel. Stacey says, love to you, Christina. I keep getting in a funk. I hope joy finds you wherever you are. Absolutely. You see, like even things I feel like that, just hearing that other people have been there, that can be so helpful. You know, it's part of the reason I started this business was because when I was going through it, I didn't hear many people talking about it. And when I looked online for advice, not advice on like mental health, but even just like getting organized and stuff like that, there just wasn't much out there that was geared towards a working mother, you know, or a stay-at-home mother. It was all, you know, get up an hour earlier and, you know, do like spend all your money on this thing. And I was like, listen, I'm not even able to brush my hair right now. So, yeah, that is like the foundation of pretty much everything I do. It's like showing people very simple, practical solutions and tips and things like that. Things that I think will genuinely help. Job 8891 says, I have enough old computer and video games to start my own museum. I don't play them, but I can't rationalize parting with them. Is this normal? 100% yes. Yes, it is. If you can't if you can't rationalize it, but they mean a lot to you, then don't part with them. You don't have to rationalize it. You know, sentiment isn't rational. So if you're not ready to part with them, don't. And you know, that's probably advice that you won't hear on anyone else's like decluttering channel. But I'm a firm believer that if you're just not ready, if you're not in that space yet, you don't have to. You don't have to do it. If you're just not quite there, maybe you'll get there in the future, maybe you won't. But there is no rational, logical decision when it comes to things like that. If you love them for some reason, they're not having any, you know, major negative impact on your life or on the life of anyone you love, then keep them. Keep them, I say. Do you have a Sega Mega Drive though? I would take that off your hands. Dan Mara, still have boxes that are unpacked after my move. I'm afraid of being buried in stuff if I unpack them without a plan of where to put the stuff. Forget your plans. Unpack them, find a space, put them in there. The reality is they're sitting in boxes anyway. Like there is no plan for them right now. So even if you move them from the box to a cupboard and it's not like the perfect cupboard and it's not the perfect spot for them, sitting in a box is not the perfect spot either. So no matter what you do, it will still kind of be a little bit of an upgrade. That's my personal advice. But listen, if you've got a box in the attic that has been there for years and you're happy for it to sit there, go ahead. But yeah, again, this whole like finding the perfect spot, you don't need a plan. You don't need a perfect spot. If the box is bugging you, put the stuff away somewhere. Jenny says, love that. Go by your own scale. This is so perfect in so many ways. We're all so different. And not even like I have days where I might get everything done. And you'll see that again if you follow me on Instagram. My stories are some days where I like get loads done. And then there are others where I'm like, nah, I'm going back to bed with my laptop and I'm watching YouTube videos all day. It's a scale for every person, and every person has their own scale from day to day, from minute to minute. So you just have to get on with it. And I like when I say get on with it, I mean like accept where you are on your scale that day, and know that the next day you could be higher up in your scale. It just swings and roundabouts. Yeah, it's a scale for everyone. There are always better days ahead. I'm a firm believer in that, always. More books, more music. I'll join a digi choir. Oh, interesting. More family time. I hope I'm working as FP. Not sure what FP is. More Greece coasts to travel. Nice. I wish for 2021. Yeah, I think we all have a wish list for 2021. Interesting, actually. I might put together a little wish list, like a proper. Thank you for the idea. Rebecca says, don't shave it, but this would be the perfect time to try one of those do-it-yourself haircuts they show you on YouTube. I mean, shaving it is a DIY haircut. So, Stacey says, I love your voice. Thank you. Andrew says, there's nothing wrong with your voice. Thank you for all these. But I do, yeah, that is like a common question, not question, but a common comment that I get. Elizabeth, something wrong away. I think it's super calming and makes things sound less scary and very possible. Yeah, some people say I speak really fast as well. Really depends. Sometimes when I'm doing a video, because I'm like really excited to share information, I'm just like, yeah, do this thing. And I think sometimes in videos as well, I'm conscious of the fact that I need to like keep the pace up, because you don't want it to be too slow or boring. I watch videos on YouTube at least 1.5 speed. So everyone I'm watching is sped up a little bit. Sometimes if they speak very slowly, I will speed it up to double speed. But I do notice then, let's say like I reboot my laptop or something happens and it goes back to normal speed, I cannot do it. I'm like, why are you talking so slowly? I have now trained myself to like hear everything fast. But yeah, sometimes I'm just so excited about something that I'm like, here's all the advice I have. Here are all these great things I learned that I'm passing on to you. So yeah, that's, but, and then other days I'm like, let's just get this done. I can look back at some videos and know, and people watching will have no idea, but I will know. I will look at that video and go, yep, that video was a struggle. Always at the end of my videos, you know, just before I click stop on the camera, I always have some little phrase that I would say to myself, like, that was like pulling teeth, or, oh, great job, Laura. So when I'm editing and I'm looking back just at the end of the video, and I always cut it out for like the main video, but there's so many things like that you miss in my videos that I chop out. Sometimes I don't, sometimes I leave in some bloopers and stuff, but yeah, that's fun fact. Let me see. But yeah, my voice does bring a lot of concern. Tanya, my morning started with burying a good friend. Oh my goodness. Well, that's a crap day for you then on the scale. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's awful. Like grief is just, I feel like it's everywhere these days. It seems to be so, like obviously grief is always there, but you know, with the pandemic and stuff, it feels extra heavy this year. And I think like if you tuned into last week's live stream, I was talking about how recently I've been thinking a lot about my granddad. And my granddad passed away like 25 years ago. Like it's not, you know, and it wasn't really sudden. It was sudden for me because at the time I didn't understand he was dying. He had cancer, and you know, as a child, I just thought he was sick. But as a kid, I thought, you know, you're sick and then you get better. It never occurred to me at the time that he wouldn't get better. He was the first person that I lost. Like it's 25 years later, has still like it still hits me randomly. But like Friday night, I bawled my eyes out about it. Like just grief is a horrible, strange, awful thing. It just hits you when you don't expect it. And even if you are kind of expecting it, it still doesn't. Sorry, Instagram paused. Even if you are expecting it, it does not make it any easier at all. I'm so sorry, Tanya. That's awful. Let me see. Tanya says, one day at a time, be compassionate towards yourself right now. Yeah. That's all any of us can do. Hannah says, agreed with above, take the proper time to grieve, then learn to celebrate and cherish the time you did have. Yes, it will take a while to get there, but you will one day. Yeah, and it's like one of those roller coasters. Like sometimes you'll be very thankful for the time that you had with them and you'll cherish all the happy memories. And then another day will just hit you like a ton of bricks. That's where I was Friday night. And like I said, 25 years. And, you know, I was young when he passed away. it wasn't like I had a whole lifetime with him or anything. Sorry. But I miss him. I still miss him. Sorry. Chadai says we're all such complex and multifaceted beings with such a range of past experiences that lead to how we navigate our own struggles, goals, etc. Yeah, just like I said, everyone is on a completely different scale. And even from day to day, it's a scale, and we all have different backgrounds and experiences, and we've gone through things that have shaped and molded who we are, and we've had family that have shaped and molded who we are for better or worse. We've had friends, acquaintances. Um, just it's just such a there's just so many different potential outcomes and variables and things. Andrew says FP is financial planner. Okay, that makes sense to me now. Sometimes people say things and I'm like, but really in my head I'm like, what? I shall have to Google that when I get home. 808 Blessed One, question on when parents keep things from a long time ago and hoarding it and want to pass it on to the kids or grandkids, what to do? First thing to do is ask them if they even want it. You may find that they don't, or you may find that they would love to have it. That's, I think a lot of that is getting caught up in your own head about kind of expectations or imagining a future that may not actually be the case. So I think just sit them down and ask them. And that kind of eliminates a lot of that wondering or guessing or imagining or visualizing. So yeah, if you've kept things from a long time ago, you may find that your kids don't want them. That does not mean, by the way, that you have to get rid of them if they're still important to you. Yeah, asking the question first. If they would be delighted to have them, then pass them on. If they say, actually, no, I don't want them, I personally have no ties to those things or whatever it may be, then you just have a much clearer view of your options. Let me see. First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who's in the comments who is just leaving such lovely messages for everyone else who is struggling. I love to see that. It's obviously not nice to see that someone else is going through something awful. But I do like to see how everyone rallies. That's really nice. Tanya says, so sorry for the loss of your grandpa, no matter how long ago it was. Yeah, I'm getting all emotional again. Well, yeah. It doesn't, like, obviously it's easier and, I don't think about him constantly or anything, but there's still days when it does hit me. Let me see. Tony says, don't say sorry, we're here for you too. Sylvia says, I'm right there with you, grieving and missing my husband. We're all suffering grief of some sort. So it, I never feel that your grief is not as, valid. Sometimes I feel like because my granddad died 25 years ago, because I was very close to him at the time, but I'm kind of like, oh, it's 25 years and he was my grandfather, like not a parent, not a sibling or something. I feel like almost like I don't deserve to still be grieving, but that's not the case. So yeah. Stacey says, thank you for a great video and chat, Laura. I love that this is a place people can reach out or support each other. Absolutely. Diana, my dad passed away on November 6th, 2020. I'm still grieving for him, as is the whole family. I'm so sorry. This time of year is, if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that this time last year, my dad was really ill. Actually, this time last year, we didn't even know. But right before Christmas, he was brought into hospital and it didn't look like he was going to make it. So last Christmas was not a good Christmas. So this year is kind of strange. He's actually in hospital today just for checkups and scans and blood work and procedures and stuff. But it's overall things are okay. I'm going to hop off now, if that's I didn't go to a hairdresser for 9 months. My hair grew up to my waist. I found some information on WikiHow about haircuts. Well, we'll see how my hair will be looking. I think the clipper is just easier for me. And my hair grows so quickly. I'm like, in a month it's going to be out again anyway. So Donna says tomorrow is 1 year since my mom passed. It's just, if you are grieving, or if you are like not even grieving, but just suffering or finding it tough, there are so many of us out there who are also suffering and grieving, but we will all get through it. I want you to know that 100% will get through it. Find a community like this one where people will listen and help if they can. And like I said, try and get that one small achievement, but don't worry about anything really except yourself and, you know, getting yourself through it. And I know this video, like at the beginning, was very lighthearted in terms of priorities, but again, that can be a good thing, like focusing on what your priorities are right then. And like I said, you know, giving yourself that cutoff point. Maybe your cutoff point is the next hour. You know something is a priority for you, like cleaning the house, but in the next hour, your priority is just reaching out to someone for support. Your priority is just brushing your teeth. Your priority is like whatever it is. So again, priorities, that sliding scale. I really hope this was helpful, whether or not you are struggling. If you are struggling, it will get better. I promise you that it will get better. Thank you so much for being here. Wishing you all love and as much luck as possible. I will send as much Irish luck as possible to you. And I hope everything picks up for everyone. 2021. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll speak to you all really, really soon. The replay will be on YouTube, like I said. Bye, everyone. Bye. Bye.